Retirement is supposed to be simple. You reach the end of the road, you take a bow, you walk away. For most people, that is exactly how it works. But rock and roll has never produced most people. It has produced individuals who built their entire identity around a stage, a guitar, a microphone, and the specific kind of electricity that only exists when a crowd of thousands is staring back at you in the dark. And when someone tells those people it is time to stop in the industry, the critics, the doctors, sometimes even their own bodies, something in them refuses, not out of desperation, not out of ego, out of something that is genuinely harder to explain than either of those things. These are 8 rock stars who refuse to retire, starting with the one who simply never entertained the conversation all the way to the story that will make you question everything you think you know about what it means to keep going. And number 1 is not who you were expecting. Number 1, starting things off, we have Mick Jagger. A man who, by the time the Rolling Stones were celebrating their 40th anniversary as a band, had already been told by more journalists, doctors, and cultural commentators than he could count that the window had closed. The argument was always the same. The music belonged to youth, the stage belonged to energy, and the passage of time was something that even the greatest performers in history were not exempt from. Jagger's response to that argument across 6 decades has been consistent and almost completely wordless. He simply kept moving. At an age when most performers are doing acoustic sets at casino residencies, Jagger was still covering distances on stage at full production arena tours that would physically challenge performers 30 years his junior.
I've been around for many a long year, stole many a man's soul and faith.
When interviewers pressed him on why retirement had never become a serious consideration, his answers were always more revealing than people gave them credit for. He didn't talk about legacy, he didn't talk about the money, he talked about what disappears when the stage does. That distinction matters more than it sounds. But the next person on this list refused to retire under circumstances that make Jagger's story look straightforward. Number 2, Keith Richards. Keith Richards has spent the better part of 5 decades being described by the medical community, the press, and a significant portion of the general public as a man who was operating on borrowed time. The jokes wrote themselves and were told so often they stopped being jokes and became a kind of cultural mythology that Richards had somehow chemically transcended the normal rules of human biology. What gets lost in the mythology is the actual story, which is far more interesting.
Ooh, baby, you got the soul, you got the silver, you got the gold.
Richards has spoken in interviews about the discipline underneath what the public read as chaos, the precision required to play the way he plays, the focus required to maintain a creative output across a timeline that dwarfs most entire careers. He has said plainly that the idea of retirement has genuinely never made sense to him, not as false bravado, but as a statement about what he believes music is for. He does not play because it is his job. He plays because stopping would require him to become someone he doesn't recognize. What follows on this list is the story of someone who tried to stop and discovered the same thing. Number 3, Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney announced a farewell tour and then another one. The pattern is well documented and has been noted by critics and fans with varying degrees of affection and exasperation. But what those headlines consistently missed was the more honest story sitting underneath them, that McCartney's relationship with performing is not a product of commercial appetite or an inability to read the room. He has spoken about it with a candor that is rare for someone of his stature, that the stage is where he processes the losses, the decades, and the weight of a legacy that includes some of the most important music the 20th century produced.
Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be.
every time he has stood in front of a crowd and played In My Life or Blackbird or Let It Be, he has said, "There is something in the room that is not replicable anywhere else." He is not chasing the past. He is using the past to stay present. The next story is one where staying present became a matter of survival. Number 4. David Bowie. David Bowie released Black Star 2 days before he died in January 2016. The album was recorded in secret, designed as a final statement, and constructed with the full knowledge that he would not be alive to see the public response to it. That is not the story of a man who refused to retire. It is the story of a man who refused to stop creating, even when creation and mortality were occupying the same room simultaneously. People in the industry who worked with Bowie during that final period have described the focus he brought to those sessions as something they had never encountered before. Not resignation, not urgency in the panicked sense, a kind of clarity that only arrives when the usual distractions have been removed. The record exists because Bowie decided that the time he had left was not a reason to stop. It was the best possible reason to continue. And now this brings us to someone whose refusal to stop came with a very different kind of price. Number 5. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne has been told he should stop more times and for more reasons than perhaps any performer in the history of rock music. The health scares, the surgeries, the diagnoses, each one arriving with a fresh wave of commentary suggesting that this was finally the moment where the story ended. And each time, Ozzy has returned to a stage. In 2020, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and the announcement was received by many as a definitive conclusion to a performing career. Ozzy did not receive it that way. He has spoken in interviews since then about what performing means to him in terms that are almost impossible to argue with, not because they are defiant, but because they are honest. He has said that being on stage is the only place where none of the rest of it matters. Not the illness, not the years, not what his body can and cannot do on a given day. Just the crowd, the music, and the feeling that produced everything else. What comes next is a story where the refusal to stop was not about illness or age, but about something far more complicated. Number 6. Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen has toured so consistently and so relentlessly across 5 decades that the question of retirement has almost never been asked of him in a serious way. But it was a particular stretch of touring in his 70s. Full stadium productions, 3-hour sets, no concessions to the scale of what he was doing, that forced the conversation into the open. I'm waiting. When journalists finally pressed him directly on it, Springsteen's answer revealed something that everyone on this list shares, but few articulate. As cleanly, he said that the relationship between him and a crowd is the most functional relationship in his life, not in a sad way, in the way that some people are built for specific things, and the cruelty of time is not that it takes those things away. It is that it tries to convince you to give them up voluntarily. He was not interested in that conversation. The next person on this list had a very different reason for refusing to have it. Number 7. Tina Turner. Tina Turner came out of retirement multiple times, each time under circumstances that would have permanently ended most careers. What separated her returns from the standard farewell tour cycle was what they were returning from. Not comfort or obscurity, but active personal catastrophe. Her comeback following her departure from Ike Turner is one of the most documented reinventions in entertainment history, but it was a later moment. Her return to touring in her 50s and 60s when she became one of the highest-grossing touring acts in the world. That revealed the real story. She has said that performing was not something she came back to despite everything she had survived. It was something she came back to because of it. The stage was not an escape from her life. It was the evidence of it. And now, this brings us to the final story on this list. The one that has no simple explanation, no clean narrative arc, and no version of itself that the industry has ever fully agreed on. There is a version of refusing to retire that looks like courage. There is another version that looks like defiance. And then there is the version that looks like something far more uncomfortable. A person who has so completely dissolved the boundary between who they are and what they do that the concept of stopping is not really a professional decision at all. It is an existential one. The rock star at the end of this list is someone who has been offered every graceful exit available and declined all of them, not out of financial necessity, not out of ego, but out of a genuine inability to locate the version of themselves that exists when the music stops. People close to them have described it with concern. Critics have described it with contempt. Fans have described it with devotion. The truth is probably somewhere that none of those three descriptions can fully reach. Because the question of when to stop is easy to ask from the outside. From the inside, for people built the way these people are built, it may not be a question at all. It may just be the one wall they were never going to climb. If you made it this far, make sure you're subscribed because the next video goes somewhere nobody is expecting.